Morning, everybody. It's so good to see all of you that braved the frozen tundra that I've returned to from Connecticut. It is way too cold. I just want to know who left all of your doors open and blasting AC and freezers open and stuff, because it's not fair to the rest of us. That's all I have to say. It is way too cold out there. We drove back. It was like -4 or something on the way. I don't like that. I'm not a fan. It's like frozen outside. It feels like I'm going into an indoor fridge or something every time I step outside. It's no good. But today is New Year's Eve, an exciting time of the year where we get a chance to think about our goals for 2018. We get to be in a place of renewal. We get to think of new things, new stuff, whatever it is that we're setting for ourselves. And feel very privileged to be able to come to you today and share the last message of the year. One that for me came from a place where I was visiting another culture, and I'm speaking about something that a lot of you know of, but I won't talk about a name, where people's lives are affected by misplaced priorities, especially amongst the church. A place where the focus has shifted greatly from where it is meant to be, from the person that is meant to be focused on, and it's now being focused on something completely different. I'm excited to be able to share with you guys a message that I'm entitling Greater. A time where we can examine, look at our great God, our great Jesus that we have, that we get to be a part of, and ask the question of, are we worshiping the Creator or creation? Where are priorities lying? Where are we looking to find renewal? Where are we looking as we begin to step into this new year that, as a culture, is a time where we begin to think about our New Year's resolutions, our hashtag goals for the year of what it is that we want to do in 2018? What is our focus? What are we thinking about? Are we thinking about, this year I want to gain a whole bunch more muscle? This year I want to go on a diet and I want to get healthy. This year, I want to get a promotion at my job. I want to start saving money for a house. I want to buy a new car. I want to do all this stuff. What are we focusing on? I feel like we as a culture are in a place where we are obsessed with bettering ourselves, or, in other words, also better distracting ourselves from what this place has to offer. And I find that as a culture, our priorities are so shifted from what they should be in, and that we need to address that. That as we think about our hashtag goals for the year, as we think about our New Year's resolutions, and I find myself guilty of this as well, that very few of them are focused on including Jesus in that, including our God who is greater in the goals that we have for the year, in the renewal that we can have for ourselves in 2018, in everything that we are going to set forward for ourselves, that Jesus is a footnote, not necessarily the priority. I found this in myself from years where I was in school, that all my goals were, I just want to pass my classes and I just want to get out, in a place where I was studying God's Word, and where I was studying Scripture day to day, and I forgot what it was about. I'm guilty of that just as much as every one of us in this room, I'm sure, are at time of misplacing our priority and where we're supposed to be looking, what we're supposed to be focusing on. So today we're going to take a look at one of the two books that I have preached on before. I guess I'm following a trend here. We're going to go into the book of Hebrews chapter 1, and we're going to look at all of it. We're going to go from Hebrews chapter 1 through 14, and we're going to begin to examine some words from one of our faithful writers of Scripture. Now, as a little background, as you guys are turning there, Hebrews is a book that speaks highly of Christ's superiority. It spends a lot of time talking about how great Jesus is, especially compared to Old Testament themes, talking about Old Testament kings and stuff that the Hebrews people were dealing with on a daily basis. There's been a lot of debate continuously amongst who wrote it. Was it Paul? Was it Barnabas? Who was it? There's a lot of questions. Ultimately, the thing that we can know for certain is that It is most likely a male believer in the Christ movement that uses male pronouns at the very least, talking about themselves, especially in Hebrews 13. They were a friend of Paul, or at least in the Pauline circle, were friends of Timothy, but ultimately, this person likes to define himself as someone that loves God intensely, that their focus is on the fact that they love Jesus more than anything else, that they are a pastoral theologian that wants to dive into the things that the people of the day were dealing with and really hit it hard, not throw any punches, just be willing to talk about what's truly important. Now, it's a really complicated book as you look at the Greek, at the words that it's written in. Out of all of them that are there, all the Greek words, there are 169 of them that are only used in the book of Hebrews. And as if you've ever studied Greek before, as a student of Greek, sometimes that is just infuriating because you have no other basis to look at to figure out what certain words mean because he's the only one that uses it. So today we're going to look at one of them that I believe is highly important. But as he uses very specific language, as he talks about very specific things, he's talking to a very specific audience. A group of people who were struggling with their identity, wanted to go back to the way that things were in their old Hebrew ways. They were placing their priorities on something that they knew was the old faithful, that was going to just get them by, that was going to do something that might be good, that's still going to better themselves. But they weren't focusing on what they were supposed to, what they once did, where they used to go to jail for because they were preaching Jesus so fervently, where they served the sick because they believed in God so intently. Their priorities shifted, and they were starting to look at something incorrectly, and they began to worship what was and not what it was supposed to be. So today we're going to read from Hebrews 1, and we're just going to go through the whole thing, and then we'll start diving into it there. So Hebrews 1 through 14 begins like this. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. For to which angels did God ever say, "You are my son, today I have begotten you"? Or again, "I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son"? And again, when he brings the firstborn into the world, he says, "Let all God's angels worship him." Of the angels, he says, "He makes his angels winds and his ministers a flame of fire." But of the Son, he says, "Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of uprightness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you and the oil of gladness beyond your companions. And you, Lord, laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will remain. They will all wear out like a garment, like a robe, you will roll them up. Like a garment, they will be changed, but you are the same, and your years will have no end. And to the which of the angels has he ever said, "Sit at my right hand, until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet"? Are they not all ministering spirits sent out to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation? Now, these are powerful words from a man who wants to remind his people who know this very dearly that their Jesus is greater. That the things that they are beginning to turn to, that the creation that they're beginning to see, that they are falling victim to, is not where they're supposed to be placing their priority. Powerful words. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to just reread a couple verses. And I would like you guys to close your eyes and just really take in just what it is that this man is writing about, what this man is saying. He starts in verse 3 as he describes Jesus. He says, He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. And he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sin, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited, that is much more excellent than theirs. Now, that description is beautiful. Our Jesus is the radiance of the glory of God. He is the exact imprint of his nature. I just get taken aback by just how powerful his language is and the words that he says. And the thing that's just is always spoken to me the most is that word radiance. Now, what does that mean, the word radiance? It is the Greek word apaugasma. It's too long. It almost sounds like spaghetti, but apaugasma. It is only ever used one time, just by this guy. He borrows it a bit from the Old Testament where it's used to describe the power of wisdom. And so in here, he's describing the relationship between God the Father and Jesus as something that's almost indistinguishable. He is the radiance of his glory. He is the shiny part of the bright light that you're looking at. Very descriptive part of something, separate but yet almost indistinguishable. He is the radiance of God's glory. He is the glowing part of our great God, and with his eyes, with everything that he shows to all of us, we get the chance to be able to see what we are truly worshiping in this world. By his illumination, we get to see it all. By him and him alone. He holds the glory of God himself in his hands, by himself, because he is greater. Now, he talks about how in the beginning, God spoke to all of our ancestors by the prophets. He used us to be able to go out and speak his word. And he was realizing that that wasn't enough. So he sent himself. And he sent it for a reason. He sent it so that he could make the purification for the sins that we have, because he knew that we would never have the chance to truly be able to get to him if he didn't do that. And so through his word, through coming down and making that purification, he gave way for us to be able to live the life that we were supposed to at the beginning, and gave us the charge to be able to go out and do things the same as him. He became much superior to his own creation, even by his own creation's sake. He came down to become like us so that he could prove that he was greater, so that he could prove that there's no way you're going back to anything that you once looked to. You're supposed to be focused on me. And then he went back to his rightful place at the right hand of his Father, but he promised that he was coming back to us. That is the first thing. He is the radiance of God. He is his radiance. And he moves on to a section of quotes that he takes right from the very thing that the people of Hebrews that he was writing to were trying to turn to instead of the charge that they were given by Jesus himself. In each of these little sections that we have here, he quotes three things. He quotes two things about who Jesus is, one about angels, or by copy as well, about his creation. And then he does it in reverse. He does one thing about an angel, and then he does two more about Jesus. And he begins to speak in a very poetic form. So in verses 5 and 6, where we're going to go back to again, he says, "For to which of the angels did God ever say, 'You are my son, today I have begotten you'? Or again, 'I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son.' And again, when he brings the firstborn into the world, he says, 'Let all God's angels worship him.'" In these first quotes, he is quoting Psalms 2, verses 7, 2 Samuel 7:14, and Deuteronomy 32, verse 43. And within his first two quotes, he creates a chiasm. He creates a poetic structure where he talks about one thing, then he talks about another, and then he talks about the same thing restated another way, and then the first thing restated another way. So it begins like this. It goes A, B, then B prime, then A prime. So talking about the first thing, it kind of makes himself a little sandwich about the things that he's going into. So if you notice, he begins at the beginning, he says, "You are my son." That's his first sentence. And the thing that he ends with, within that structure, he ends it and he says, "And he shall be to me a son." So he begins and ends with the fact that he is the Son of God. And he puts in the middle that he has begotten him, that he is a father, all to roll into the fact, to draw attention to how great it is that Jesus is the Son of God. That he is not only just a man that came down and he'd be able to walk with us and he talked with us and he lived life like we did, but he is also possessed something much different than that. He possessed the ability to be worthy of praise because he is the Son of God. And not just a son, not just any son. He talks about how he was the firstborn in verse 6. That he is worthy of praise because he is God's son as much as he is the firstborn into the entire world. Now, in the Old Testament, the firstborn would receive a double portion of everything that everyone else in the family was going to inherit. And so Jesus, as the firstborn of all creation, he deserves double the importance, double everything else that all the rest of us could possibly receive. And that's to be in the presence of God himself. Because that's who he is. Because he is God. So he's drawing attention to the fact that he is the Son of God, that he is to be like God himself, and that he deserves to be worshipped. He ends his quote by saying, "Let all God's angels worship him." Let all creation worship Jesus, because he is worthy of our praise. He is given a name that is worthy of all the praise that we could possibly muster. He's worth it all. He's got it all in his hands. He has everything that we could possibly imagine. He was described everything that was said before, but not only that, he gets to hold the inheritance of everything. He gets to be God's son. He is it. He's worthy of it all. And he moves on into verses 7 through 12, where he says of the angels, he says, he makes his angels winds and his ministers a flame of fire. But of the Son, he says, "Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of uprightness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions." He's quoting a whole bunch of different parts of the Psalms that talk about just how great this servant of God that was supposed to come is going to be. And all of these things that are listed are fulfilled in Jesus. Everything that they could have hoped for, a great king, a great leader, a great servant, are all wrapped up into one perfect package of Jesus. Because this man has the nature of God. He begins by starting to talk about his creation. So he does this in the reverse as he did the first one. He talks about angels first. He goes in and he said he makes his angels winds and his ministers a flame of fire. He's describing our identity that we get if we're supposed to look at everything the way that the Old Testament did. Flame and wind are supposed to be instruments of God's will within the Old Testament. It's used all over the place. Flame and wind, they move as they are supposed to. They go this way and that, and so we are those things. Angels and his ministers, they're winds and they're flames of fire. They're meant to be tools used by the Son of God to go and proclaim the majesty that he possesses, the majesty of the world. It starts there, and he moves to talk about who Jesus is himself with this 13-line description of how Jesus is the eternal Son. He talks about his nature being eternal. He talks about his role within creation. He says, "Your throne, O God, is forever and ever." And he ends it with the same thing. He says, "And your years will have no end." He creates another sandwich where everything that within this is meant to explain the fact that he's going to be around for a really long time, longer than any of us could possibly fathom. I don't know about you, but when I try to think of infinity or something eternal, I just think of like a white, endless hallway, and it's just really confusing. As you think about how his years are never going to have an end, it doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. It's incomprehensible, but it's true. This God that we're supposed to be looking to, that has the nature of God, this Son of God, this Jesus that we get to worship, he's eternal. He's going to be around forever. And that's reason alone to be able to look at our priorities and begin to figure out what it is that we are looking at. He explains how this God is forever and ever. His throne that he's going to rule on is forever. The scepter of uprightness is the scepter of his kingdom. The testament to what righteousness truly is everything that he shows, in other words. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a leader that I want to follow. Someone who proclaims righteousness above all else, that hates wickedness, that is never going to end, that is anointed by God himself, that possesses all of this that he could possibly have, and we get to follow after him. That's the God that we follow. That's the leader that we're looking to. That's the example that we have to chase after. It's an eternal God. It's an upright God. It is a God that is anointed, and he is beyond anything else that we could possibly imagine. He is beyond all other parts of our companions. And he moves on and he says, you, Lord, laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment. Like a robe, you will roll them up. Like a garment, they will be changed, but you are the same, and your years will have no end. This God that we get to worship, he's been there from the very beginning. He started this whole business. He started it all. He knows the inner workings. He knows what it was meant to be at the beginning. He knows what we were meant to look at, what we were supposed to be like, the way that the lion laid with the lamb. He witnessed all of it because he created it, because it all started with the power of his words. He was a part of creation, and he was there before it. He's here now, and he's going to be here way after he decides that creation is going to be something different. He created it all. He's this power. Just furthering the point that he's trying to make, that this Jesus is greater than anything that you could possibly looking at that you are trying to find yourself. Now, what's the difference here? What's the difference between what he's talking about within his ministers of flame of fire and us? It's just that. It's that we are temporary. These angels, his creation that he has made, it's not going to be around forever. It's not described as eternal. It's not described as something that's not going to have an end. It's described as something that's meant to be used by this God of the universe, that he is that we get to be used by him because we are his creation. That all this stuff that we get to be good stewards of, that all this stuff that we get to interact with, that we get to be a part of, this blessing of a world that we have here, it's going to come to an end. It's going to be used to proclaim the glory of this God that we get to follow. It's temporary, but we're still a part of it. We still get to be a part of it. We still get to be used by this God. We still have an important role to play. We still have a place that we are supposed to be at. He's not discrediting it by saying that we're temporary. In fact, he's saying that it is all that more important because of the fact it's meant to be used for a specific purpose in a specific time. We are meant to be used. We are meant to be explained and let out to this world because God wants to use us. And because we get to follow after this eternal God that we have so that we could move forward in it. And he finishes off all this by saying in verses 13 and 14, and to which of the angels has he ever said, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet? Are they not all ministering spirits sent out to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation? He starts things out in the way that he did it at the beginning, where he begins explaining a point about Jesus and with a rhetorical question, and then explaining their relationship and their rank after that. He's explaining that our Jesus ranks before all. Our Jesus ranks before all. Now, he's quoting Psalm 110:1 so that we would begin to reflect back on the thing that started this whole argument at the beginning of verse 3. That our Jesus compares so much higher to his creation than anything that you could possibly imagine. There's nothing else in the entire universe, in all things that are, that has ever been said to sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. There's nothing that says, no matter what you're going through, I'm going to tear all this down and you get to sit here with me. There's nothing else where he is described as that. It is just Jesus. He is the only one that gets to receive this sort of praise. He's the only one that is described as eternal. He is the only one that had a role in all of creation. He is the only one that ranks before all. He is it. He is all that we are meant to look towards. He's the only thing. We are called to be ministering spirits, to go out and do things for his sake, to help those that are meant to inherit salvation. Angels are here to be able to help. All of his creation is meant to show his glory, and yet we forget our priorities often. We forget our job. We forget this great God that we have that describes us, and what better time than now to begin to remember it? What better time than today, on New Year's Eve, when tomorrow we're starting 2018 off with a bang? What better time to begin to think about how great that our God is and to go out and do things differently because of it than the time when everyone is looking to make a change in their life? As you begin to set your own goals for what you want your life to be in 2018, I pray that Jesus is at the forefront, that you include him in all other things that you're doing. Having your priority being Jesus doesn't mean that you exclude the other things that you're supposed to do. We are called to be ministering spirits. We're called to go out and be good users of the stuff that God has given to us. We're called to be good stewards of the things that we have, our bodies, our families, the people around us. It just means that if Jesus is our priority, then he's going to spill over into everything. Then he's going to have his hands in all parts of your life. That he's going to have a hand in your finances, in your health, in your friends, in your family, in the way you speak, in the place that you go to work, in the stuff that you do for fun. It's in all of it. It's in your social media. It's in the way that you present yourself to the world. Jesus is going to begin to invade all parts of that, and it's going to be evident. As we begin to make Jesus our own, as we begin to explicitly involve him in everything that we do, I believe that that brings us full circle. That as we think about the time that we are going to have in this next year, that as we think about our goals that we are beginning to set, like I talked about at the beginning, I pray that you begin to ask yourself this question, this one that I asked you right as we began today. Are we worshiping the Creator, or is it the creation? As we think about our priorities, as we think about our resolutions, as we think about this year that we have ahead, where are we looking? What are you looking for? What do you truly want? What's the motivation behind the things that you're doing? Now, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means for you. I don't know what that means to change in your life, to fit it into, or to tear it all away for the cause, for the sake of Jesus. I don't know what that looks like. What I do know is that when it shows up, it's going to spill over into everything. It's going to be all about Jesus. Now, before they begin to sing, before we begin to move on with things, I want to spend time in prayer, but I would like you all to first begin to pray for those around you as they begin to shed their own things for 2018. To silently pray for the people that are on your left, that are on your right, that are behind you, that are in front of you, for the stuff that they are going to be doing in 2018, for the goals that they are setting, for the ideas that they have that they want their life to be like. I want you to spend some time praying for those people now. Jesus, we thank you for who you are. God, for the fact that you didn't just sit up at the place that you deserve to be at the right hand of the Father, Lord, but that you cared so much for your creation, God, that you became one of us. God, that you humbled yourself, that you came down to show how much greater that you are as opposed to everything else that we could possibly imagine. God, I thank you for the reminder that you have given me to look to you first in everything that I do. God, I thank you that you have made a way for all of us to focus on who you are. God, a place that we can look to for reminders about how great that you truly are in this world. God, and that we get to turn to it daily. God, just to remember the things that you have done for us. God, I pray for each and every one of the men and women that are around me. God, for the new year that they are about to have. God, for the time that they get to spend with their families. Jesus, for the celebration that we get to have of a new year that we have coming up, for the things that we are looking forward to. And Lord, I pray that the priorities, the things that we look to, Lord, that they are you first. God, we set our hearts and we set our minds on things that are above, not on things that are below. Jesus, we thank you for who you are and all that you have done for us. And Lord, we are so sorry for the times that we don't acknowledge the things that you have given us and the good things that you do for us when they truly matter. God, and I pray that in these moments we are beginning to think about how we can do things focused on you more each day. Now, I hope that as you guys begin to think about 2018 and you think of what this next year is going to be like, that you are encouraged knowing that as you focus on Jesus, our great God, that there's nothing you can't accomplish with him. That as you set out to do the things that he is calling to you to, that it may not always be easy, may not always be glamorous or fun, but it's going to be worth it because it's all for him. Because it's all that we got. It's all that we're called to do. We get to be his. We get to be his, and we get to go out and do things because of it. Now, I'd like to end the service with a blessing found in Numbers, verses 24 through 26. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. or Lord, lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. Pray that you guys have a wonderful week, that you have sights set on what 2018 is going to be like with Jesus. Go in peace.